Hello, and welcome to Community Matters. This is your host, Becky Steinbrunner, and thank you all for being out there in the listening audience today. We are honored to have a wonderful guest here in the studio with us today, Miss Skylar Sacoolas from GreenAction, and I think you're really going to enjoy and appreciate listening and meeting her over the air and hearing more about her good work and where you can come and listen to future presentations. I'd like to just begin a little bit here by saying thank you to Satellite Digital Media Studio, where we are, and that is at 325 Soquel Avenue, Santa Cruz. If you're looking for a safe, clean, quiet, very nice place to work in remotely, there are spaces here for you. There are also small meeting rooms. You can also arrange to have your mail delivered here if you work from home primarily, but just need to have a different box that might be a little cheaper than the post office box. Come check out Digital Media Studio. That's the satellite workspace at 325 Soquel Avenue. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce my wonderful guest here, Skylar Sacoolas from GreenAction. Welcome, Skylar.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You are very welcome, and I really appreciate your coming to the studio.
Absolutely.
Why don't you give us just a brief introduction about yourself and then lead into the work you do?
Yeah, of course. So, my name is Skylar Sacoolas. I am here from GreenAction for Health and Environmental Justice. I am an environmental justice organizer. I've been with GreenAction for about 3 years now. We are a grassroots community organization focused on mobilizing community power to win victories that change government and industry policies and practices that protect health and promote environmental, social, economic, and racial justice. We were founded almost 30 years ago in late 1997 with a 113-day occupation defending native land in Southern California and Arizona. It was in Ward Valley where we were stopping a nuclear dump proposed in the area. And we celebrate every year that this area is still nuclear free and clean of contamination. So we were founded off of community action, direct action, standing for environmental justice, using community knowledge, community power. And we're here today, still strong. We're located in San Francisco, but we work in communities all across California, Arizona, Utah, and beyond. We are an environmental justice organization, so if you're unfamiliar with the term environmental justice, it's a little bit different than your mainstream environmentalism. Environmental justice and social justice can't be separated. Yeah. So in environmental justice, you don't ignore the systems of oppression that influence how communities are protected, resourced, or targeted. Environmental racism targets Black and Brown and Indigenous communities, often by citing heavy industry, dumps, incinerators, or locating affordable housing in vulnerable communities or environments, such as areas that are most likely to flood or most affected by drought, etc. Environmental justice and environmental racism have been studied for decades, and GreenAction is by no means the only organization working on this. There are thousands of countless environmental justice organizations and groups. GreenAction is just one of many. We are currently working in several communities, but some that I will note are Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco, the Central Valley, where the two and only hazardous waste dumps in California are located, both in Spanish-speaking communities in the Central Valley, Kettleman City and Buttonwillow. And both of those were the dumps are operating on expired permits that were issued with racially discriminatory practices, and the initial processes were not translated. and that's how they were allowed to get away with a lot of the things that they were. And these dumps continue to run today, and environmental justice really shows us these massive flaws in our the way that we handle waste, our energy systems, and the communities that are sacrificed in our current systems.
Yeah.
My role at GreenAction is focused on shoreline contamination and climate change, how sea level rise and groundwater rise and other flooding events put shoreline contamination sites at risk. So specifically in the San Francisco Bay Area, the shoreline of the entire bay is riddled with contaminated sites. There are thousands of sites within 1,000 feet of the shoreline that are contaminated. And all of these sites are at risk of sea level rise and groundwater rise, flooding the sites either permanently or semi-permanently, and mobilizing contamination, increasing exposure pathways for those communities. And we're not seeing the appropriate action coming from our government agencies on how to respond and prepare for these type of sites.
Sadly so.
Yeah. And the types of remediation that are done at these shoreline contaminated sites need to be protected well into the future. So some of our current remediation methods, like robust containment or capping, only cover or contain part of the contamination. But if that site is fully underwater or even semi-underwater parts of the year, that puts that contamination at great risk of mobilizing, going into underground infrastructure, and spreading much farther than the original site boundary was.
Yeah. Or in areas prone to groundwater or a stormwater runoff.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So, often we think of sea level rise as a future problem, but we're a coastal community. We're familiar with king tides and very high tides. These flooding events happen right now. We see some of the sites in San Francisco, specifically in Bayview Hunters Point. That is, if you're not familiar, that site, Bayview Hunters Point in San Francisco is home to the only Superfund site in San Francisco, the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard Superfund site. And Superfund sites are the most contaminated sites in the country. That's the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, oversees a list of Superfund sites. And the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard Superfund site was contaminated by historical naval activity. So there's toxic and radioactive waste that remains at that site. And that is directly on the shoreline. One of the parcels is even underwater because it was a shipyard. So we see that these types of sites need careful cleanup. They need attention to our future problems and how sea level rise and groundwater rise will put this site at risk. I draw to Bayview Hunters Point as an example.
Is that what got you interested in doing this work? Was that the primary draw? Was what you saw and learned about there? Or what got you in this work?
Yeah, I studied environmentalism and climate change in school, and I really found a passion in environmental justice because I see that environmental justice is the only way that we're going to be able to combat the climate crisis without leaving communities behind. We see a lot of proposed solutions to climate change and decarbonization that don't necessarily account for all of the communities along the way. So we're seeing that with how we're handling our waste in California. Our hazardous waste dumps are putting communities at risk. We can't properly dispose of waste without putting communities at risk. So environmental justice really showed so many ways of acknowledging environmental issues and solving them by using community power, acknowledging who is most at risk and not ignoring the systems of oppression that add to the risk and vulnerabilities communities are facing.
Skylar, I'm going to ask you to pull the microphone just a
Oh.
little closer, more directly in front of you, wherever it's comfortable. But I'm thinking that's going to help get your voice out in a more clear way to our audience. I want to thank you for your work, first of all.
Yeah.
And I'm aware that you are working with the Never Again Moss Landing people.
Yeah.
And also the Stop Lithium BESS battery energy storage system in Santa Cruz County. Let's talk first about your work with the Never Again Moss Landing group. There is an example of government oversight that isn't working.
Absolutely, yeah. I didn't want to jump too far ahead. And
well, I'm going to let you draw here,
you.
but
yes. So we reached out to Never Again Moss Landing, which is the volunteer community group spearheading efforts in Moss Landing to bring up community concerns about the massive Moss Landing battery fire that happened in January and February. We reached out in April of this year. As a Santa Cruz resident, I knew of the fire. I was watching, how agencies were responding, what the city and county were doing, and it wasn't until a few months later I knew that GreenAction was going to have to get involved or at least offer assistance, because Never Again Moss Landing and other community members were highlighting that state agencies weren't coming into the town. They weren't communicating with community members. Their results were questionable. And in April, we reached out to Never Again Moss Landing and got in contact with Brian.
Brian Roeder.
Yes, and we offered our assistance and, said GreenAction has a long history of working with government agencies and holding them accountable to what they're responsible for. And the California Environmental Protection Agency and the Department of Toxic Substances Control, which is a department underneath the California Environmental Protection Agency, are both responsible for cleaning up this site and testing and kind of understanding what the damage is from this site. But historically, we've seen that these agencies tend to point fingers at each other. They compartmentalize their work. They don't necessarily work very collaboratively. The County of Monterey responded and has a lot of information online, but we saw that the Department of Toxic Substances Control, I also might call them DTSC, they tested 8 locations in January, but they didn't test anything downwind, and the way that they tested, there were some questions by community and also Never Again Moss Landing. And I just the work that Never Again Moss Landing has done is so impressive and crucial to this work and to getting these agencies to come down. It wasn't until we sent a letter, GreenAction and Never Again Moss Landing sent a letter to the top DTSC, the Department of Toxic Substances Control officials, the director and the Office of Environmental Equity deputy director. And we sent them a letter basically saying that we know that the DTSC conducted preliminary soil testing, but community concern warrants further investigation and transparency. We requested that they engage directly with community members in Moss Landing and the community group, and we wanted to better understand potential ongoing impacts to health and investigate the concerns that were raised by community. They are still processing their data that they did in January, and they also collected some data in May, and that data is not yet public. We're waiting for it still. Never Again Moss Landing collected over 100 ghost wipe samples, so there's a lot of community data as well, and we want the department to acknowledge these findings because according to the Department of Toxic Substances Control, in their response, we heard back from them on June 3rd, their response claimed that the initial sampling results did not show evidence of impact from the fires.
Oh my goodness.
That is directly from their letter back to us. But they said, however, 2 specific areas were recommended for further investigation. So we're holding them to this further investigation. We're also hoping that they acknowledge the community tests that found more than they found.
Yes.
Tested in farther areas, they got more robust data.
Yes. And Professor Ivan Ielo's work at Moss Landing Marine Lab.
Yes, and the community data was in line with those findings.
Exactly.
So it helped, solidify that data as well. And, it's community science is difficult, but Never Again Moss Landing did it in such a way that ensured community members were trained, were doing these samples properly, were well informed on what they were doing and why and what data they needed to collect when they were taking the samples. So their data is very well collected.
Yes, I was part of that effort, and I was really impressed with the instructions.
Good, yeah.
They stressed impartiality. So, and they were very clear on the process. And if you didn't understand it, you could stay and listen and get it again, because they wanted it to be credible, to be uniform.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and
they did a fabulous job.
Absolutely. So pushing agencies to acknowledge this very concrete data and these findings that were done responsibly.
And paid for it themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. These resources weren't provided by government agencies or county or state agencies.
Yeah.
So we heard back from them, and DTSC, the Department of Toxic Substances Control, also looped in the EPA, the California Environmental Protection Agency, since they are responsible for the on-site cleanup. So like I said, they kind of compartmentalized their work. EPA, there's the US EPA and the California EPA. The Cal EPA is just specific to California, and that's where the Department of Toxic Substances Control is under. So that's also California specific. The EPA is responsible for on-site cleanup. So right at the Moss Landing, where Vistra was located, right at the power plant site, that's where EPA is responsible. So they're responsible for testing and cleanup on site, so within the site boundaries, and then DTSC is responsible for off site, along with the county. So DTSC wasn't really, they are hands off for on site, and EPA is hands off for off site. So they're not necessarily working together on those things.
Goodness.
But we were able to meet with both of them in late June to kind of directly ask them questions and ask them what their next steps are as well. And that's how we figured out when their data is incoming and what we should expect to see from them and how we can best communicate with them going forward, because it's been difficult to get in touch with them and have community members able to express their concerns and ask questions freely.
And get answers.
Exactly. So the meeting that we had with them was just agency folks and then Never Again Moss Landing and myself. But we're hoping that they will continue to come back and engage with community and be in these meetings and offer live responses so that community members can ask questions and receive answers. That wasn't something that they've done yet in Moss Landing.
Yeah. And I understand that there was some misinformation, if you will, put out early on that was never corrected. But your agency sort of held their feet to the fire. And I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I thought it was a pretty critical action that you helped the people achieve.
We stepped in a little bit later, I think. DTSC they've just claimed that their data is incoming and that they've pushed back a few dates too with their phase 2, but
they're not being real forthcoming or cooperative with the people.
And I mean, these agencies don't typically like to admit guilt. Yeah. And if they do, there's typically something else they're not admitting. I learned that from one of my coworkers, that if they're admitting to something, that you wouldn't expect them to admit, there's probably something even worse that they're hiding underneath.
Oh, it's sad to hear, but real life. And for those of you who are just joining us, welcome, and thank you for joining Community Matters. And our guest here in the studio is Miss Skylar Sacoolas with GreenAction, who is working arm in arm with many people, but notably here in our area with the Never Again Moss Landing folks, and also now helping the Stop Lithium BESS in Santa Cruz County. So I will invite people, if you'd like to call. We're at about halfway through the hour. If anyone wants to call, Skylar said calls are okay. And if you have questions, I would encourage you to call our studio number. That's 831-265-5050. And hopefully the gremlins will not be preventing calls today in the technology. Sometimes that happens. So thank you. I want to ask what can people do to work with you and the Never Again Moss Landing? People are upset about this. People are frightened by it. People are ill because of it. What do you recommend that people do?
I would recommend getting involved with Never Again Moss Landing, reaching out to them. I know they have resources on their website for ways to get involved. Mm-hmm. GreenAction was a part of their panel a few weeks ago or a month ago, healing from an eco-disaster, and mm-hmm. they're having another one next Monday.
Yeah.
This coming Monday on the 14th. So check out their upcoming events. And for local issues, definitely connect with Never Again Moss Landing. Regeneración in Pajaro Valley is another environmental justice organization locally. They're really great, and they're doing a lot of community organizing as well. For other things also, not necessarily the Moss Landing fire. And then there's also information on the Santa Cruz or Stop BESS Santa Cruz County page. GreenAction, you can absolutely get involved with GreenAction as well. Mm-hmm. Reach out to me personally, or reach out to us through our website, www.greenaction.org. We're just one piece of this Moss Landing fire. There's so many groups and volunteers and other environmental justice and environmental organizations helping too. So mm-hmm. I would say that go to Never Again Moss Landing and see their information, reach out, lend mm-hmm. a hand. If you're a scientist or a researcher, or you have some time and energy to spare, they could use it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that website again is neveragainmosslanding.org. Excellent information, and the event that you're referring to next Monday, July 14th, is at 1:30 p.m. in person at the Prunedale Grange. That's at on Morrow Road in Prunedale, and also online. Also on the Never Again Moss Landing page is a link to the panel that you were part of earlier that also had other scientists involved. And that was at the Hot Enchilada. It was excellent panel. I was there. Excellent work. So I'm very encouraged because, as Mr. Brian Roeder has said, it became sadly apparent that the cavalry was not coming from the federal, the state, and some from the county, but under great duress. Supervisor Glenn Church for the area has been doing his best, but with not a lot of support from others in the county. And maybe you've experienced something different, but in the public meetings that I've attended, that is what I've seen. Assembly member Dawn Addis is there working as much and as hard as she can. She's from the Morro Bay area, and they are leading a very good campaign down there to stop lithium BESS, battery energy storage systems. So, yeah, and one of the things, we don't even necessarily know the true cause of the fire in Moss Landing, which is something that's also really key when we're looking at other proposed BESS facilities in Santa Cruz County and beyond. We don't know, the companies claim to not yet know why this fire started.
And if we don't even know what caused it or how we could prevent something like this in the future, we absolutely cannot be planning these types of facilities without knowing how to ensure that this type of disaster doesn't happen again.
Indeed.
Right now, Vistra is able to claim that on their website it says, quote, multiple agencies and organizations have monitored local air, water, and soil. To date, no risks to public health have been observed.
Oh, please.
We know that this isn't true.
No.
We know that this isn't true because of the hundreds to thousands of community members that have experienced health impacts themselves, that have reported health impacts. We know this from the Never Again Moss Landing data. We can kind of know this from the Department of Toxic Substances Control saying that they are pursuing more data and they're going to further investigate. That if there's grounds to further investigate, we can't allow Vistra to make a claim like there are no risks to public health.
Right.
And these agencies are allowing that. And when Vistra is allowed to make a claim, Vistra is the company that owned the batteries that burned in Moss Landing. And so they're able to make these claims without repercussions and without the accountability that they really should be responsible for. Mm-hmm. And so it's DTSC and EPA, they are responsible. They're the organizations that they're talking about. Those are the organizations that those are the agencies that need to have tests and results that say, actually, we found elevated levels of heavy metals that that could lead to health impacts, or that could expose residents and community members to unhealthy levels of something. But this fire happened almost 7 months ago, where 6 to 7 months ago, we're not seeing accountability or responsibility yet from Vistra, and the agencies are allowing that to happen by not providing proper data or testing.
Yeah. And who is the agency that's supposed to be the watchdog of this? The EPA, the DTSC?
Yeah. So,
who's their watchdog?
Right. So the California Environmental Protection Agency oversees the Department of Toxic Substances Control. Mm-hmm. So the California EPA is in charge. They are supposed to oversee. So even if they're not responsible for on-site cleanup, they're responsible for ensuring DTSC does their job on off-site cleanup. Mm-hmm. But we don't always see them hold them to these accountability standards that we would like to see as community members and environmental justice groups, making sure that, they're not cutting corners. We see, like I mentioned, these agencies will respond in ways that we know aren't sufficient, but it's part of their policy, like for shoreline sites where they will use remediation methods like containment or capping. They're not, or we know that those aren't suitable for a site that would be subjected to sea level rise or groundwater rise or other types of flooding. These agencies also typically assess contaminants individually. And so if you look at the acceptable level for one heavy metal, so nickel, for example, that you might test and it might be below the level, but if you're testing dozens of contaminants and they're all just underneath the level of what's acceptable, well, how do those all interact together? How do all of those interact together in my body? Yes. It might be okay if you're exposed to just one of them, but if you're exposed to dozens or, a certain combination, that's not necessarily studied or addressed by them. Mm-hmm. And those aren't accounted for when they're saying, oh, that's a safe level or that's an acceptable level.
Wow.
We don't necessarily know how these contaminants interact with each other or interact in our bodies, or if they're impacting the same part of your body that can add stress. And some of these contaminants, like lead, those bioaccumulate. You don't necessarily, your body's not able to clean those out of your body naturally. Mm-hmm. So there are policies within these agencies that are also outdated that we're trying to get them to better address and make sure that when we're saying this is safe or this is going to be protective, that it actually is safe and actually will be protective.
Mm-hmm. Following through on what they say, huh?
Absolutely.
And, the issue I think about ongoing exposure.
Mm-hmm.
When it's very windy in Moss Landing, there's no cover there. The site has not been remediated at all. Mm-hmm. And so the people who live in the area downwind are continuing possibly to be exposed.
Right.
The cumulative impacts. Is anyone talking about that?
They are supposed to be. The Department of Toxic Substances Control is supposed to be. GreenAction actually won a civil rights settlement in 2016 against the hazardous waste dump in Kettleman City. And part of that was they were supposed to come up with cumulative impact analysis, and they still haven't done that. And that was almost 10 years ago.
Wow.
And that was something they were required to do. So we're still pushing for them to do that, but these agencies don't necessarily prioritize environmental justice or community concerns.
What's a way to put pressure on them to pay a little more attention to this? What do you think?
They have opportunities for public participation and engagement. The Department of Toxic Substances Control has a board of environmental safety that was created as a way to engage more with the public and facilitate communications between community and DTSC officials. This is absolutely an avenue to communicate, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's been the most effective. A lot of community groups, including GreenAction, have not had the best experience presenting to the Board of Environmental Safety and moving things along with them. Their past several meetings have been focused on this new draft hazardous waste plan that they're proposing that would allow dumping hazardous waste in municipal garbage dumps.
No.
Which is a massive red flag for so many reasons.
Huh.
Where we see our current hazardous waste dumps being ill-managed already,
Yes.
and allowing that type of hazardous waste to go into municipal garbage dumps that weren't built for that in the first place is massively dangerous. So GreenAction and many other groups are working to make sure that doesn't go through. And we've made some strides, and I think right now it's...
Thank you.
It is not going... we'll see. I don't want to...
Yeah.
But we've seen some successes in kind of holding them and saying that that's absolutely not okay. We cannot allow that to happen.
Yeah. How much power do our legislators have in all of this?
I don't know if I would be able to say accurately, and it also depends on your legislator and how much they're willing to do.
Stick their neck out politically,
right.
basically, is what it is.
I haven't done as much trying to get legislators in or, to vocally support, but my efforts in getting legislators and senators to try and make a public statement haven't been super successful. So they can absolutely influence policy with their votes when they're voting on issues that have to do with these types of things. But it can be difficult to have them make a statement that could seem controversial in their role. But, things like us, GreenAction has asked California representatives to call for 100% cleanup of the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard Superfund site.
Yeah.
The site I mentioned, it's still contaminated with radioactive and toxic waste from decades. It's been contaminated for generations. And we've been calling for a complete cleanup for decades. And they're still continuing to say that, well, we're going to cap and contain some of the waste on site. And we're saying, no, it needs to be 100%. It all needs to be removed or remediated on site, but 100% or as close to 100% as humanly possible, because obviously there's background levels and
Sure.
But pushing to, clean up as best as humanly possible, and getting representatives to make that statement was almost impossible.
Wow.
So it can be difficult, and I don't know if So I don't know, but having them influence their votes is definitely important. That but in my experience, it hasn't been necessarily the best use of.
Yeah, it kind of seems like a captured agency by the industry is what I've seen.
Yeah.
My opinion, we're talking about big money,
right,
and a lot of influence.
Absolutely.
And
for the Hunters Point shipyard example, they're planning San Francisco's biggest redevelopment project in that area. So there's a lot of money and influence on getting that site as cleaned up as fast as possible.
Put
so
the
that they
rug
can,
over the top of it and go on.
Yeah, exactly. Putting a concrete Band-Aid over it so that they can build housing. But, I mean, in the Hunters Point example, that site was separated into parcels to clean up in chunks. And the first parcel was transferred in 2016. And years later, they built housing on top of it. People moved in, and they found radioactive objects underneath the homes. People were getting sick. It's such a clear example of rushing the cleanup and it not being cleaned. They didn't find it all, and they found multiple radioactive objects buried under people's homes. And so that's what we're going to see if we don't clean up these sites properly.
Yeah.
Especially shoreline sites like Bayview Hunters Point, like Moss Landing. Moss Landing's another shoreline site. It's an agricultural site.
Yeah. An estuary in the edge of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Incredible, isn't it?
And I found an old article from 2003. This is actually not GreenAction's first time working in Moss Landing. I found an article hanging in our office from 2003 where there was a garbage incinerator proposed in Moss Landing. And GreenAction canvassed door to door, alerting the dangers of incineration. And we were part of the advocacy against making sure that facility wasn't built. And here we are today. There's no garbage incinerator in Moss Landing. Mm-hmm. So that was just a cool little. I was like, oh well, we've been here before.
Yes, you've got your
worked in the community before.
Your fingers in the pot here
a while ago.
But ongoing. And again, I want to thank you for your work stepping in to help the people.
Absolutely,
incredible.
This Monterey Bay has been my home forever, and I mean, I was following the fire and what had happened personally, and I wasn't necessarily thinking, oh, GreenAction's going to get involved. We're going to get, be a part of this. But then months after the fire, the pattern is repeating. The agencies aren't showing up. They're not taking full responsibility right away. They're not thoroughly testing. They don't necessarily want to find a bunch of contamination all around the Bay Area, our Monterey Bay Area. So they are repeating their pattern of, they need to be pushed further by community groups like Never Again Moss Landing, like GreenAction, because otherwise they might try and cut corners and, get away with only testing 8 sites and saying that actually there's no health no health impacts.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but most of those sites, maybe only one was not taken on the ocean side of the fire. It didn't even evaluate the area where the plume went.
Right. Yeah. When you look at the plume maps versus their testing maps, and there's a lot of concerns when you look at their testing, and Never Again Moss Landing has had really, specific critiques of how they were testing, how deep in the soil were they testing, how much of the soil were they testing. When you really look at like their procedures for how they did this, it's like, well, this was a fire with, it should really only be the very top layer.
1 to 2 millimeters is what Dr. Yalo did.
Right. I think DTSC went inches into the ground.
Yes. So it's all diluted.
Exactly. So it wasn't a true test, or it wasn't an accurate representation of the contamination that really was in the community and in people's backyards, on people's skin. It didn't reflect what was actually happening in the community. And we see that here in Moss Landing and also in hundreds of communities across California and beyond.
Thank you so much. I'd like to jump. We've got about 15 minutes left. We do have a caller on the line. I'm going to ask the caller just to hold on for a little bit while Skylar, you tell us a little bit about how you are getting involved with the Stop Lithium BESS, BESS, in Santa Cruz County.
Yeah, so after being involved with Never Again Moss Landing and joining the panel, the Healing from Eco Disaster panel in late May, I was contacted by Stop BESS Santa Cruz County, and they invited me to speak in the July 17th Stop Lithium BESS in Santa Cruz County public meeting that will be at the Simpkins Swim Center and Community Center from 6:30 to 8 p.m. GreenAction, like I have said, has worked in hundreds of communities and has seen this repeated pattern of environmental racism, the most impacted communities being targeted for these types of facilities. And this group, Stop Lithium BESS Santa Cruz County, has so much information and research on the proposed facilities in the county and the risks that each location poses. And as I've learned more about them, like I said earlier, we should be halting these proposals because we don't even know why the Moss Landing BESS facility burned in the first place. I heard from Never Again Moss Landing folks that facility was supposed to last 15 years longer than it did. It was supposed to have a much longer life than it did. And it was never actually supposed to burn to that scale. The permitting for that facility, the Vistra facility, was never outlined that as a potential risk. It said maybe one or a few batteries could burn, but they never outlined that dozens could burn and hundreds could burn. So the risks that Vistra was able to kind of not address, these facilities absolutely need to address. And we need to know why the fires happened before we propose or allow a facility like this to be proposed right next to housing. So the Stop BESS in Santa Cruz County shared that there are 3 proposed facilities in Santa Cruz County, and the one that's most likely to go through is the one on Minto Road,
which Watsonville.
In Watsonville.
Next to affordable housing.
Exactly.
And many people who do not speak English very well.
Yeah, and that's exactly the pattern of environmental racism that targets low-income, language-barriered people that are already overburdened and underserved in their communities. And the unprecedented attacks on our Latinx and Mexican community puts these communities at a massive risk right now. So even coming out to learn about these facilities, to speak out against them, it can put you at risk right now. And these agencies, So, Santa Cruz BESS Santa Cruz County, the Stop BESS Santa Cruz County, they have asked, why would they want to site an industrial scale facility like this adjacent to a densely packed low-income residential neighborhood? And when you think about that, you have to ask, who would be benefiting from this facility? Who would this facility serve? Who would work at this facility? Would they be hiring local people? Would they be hiring outside community members? What would the occupational hazards for this facility be? There's a lot of questions when, just kind of asking why.
Well, I have reviewed the risk assessment for this project. It would not be maintained or operated with any person on site because it's too hazardous, carcinogenic problems, and if there were a fire, it cautions that firefighters should not get any closer than 100 feet away because of the explosions that are known to happen in these containers, and the doors would become projectiles. So that's written in, but what is not written in or even showed on the map is the densely populated area near the facility. the Shapiro Knolls affordable complex, which has, I think, 87 families, over 200 people there. That is a blur in the map of the facility, as is the Diamond Estates subdivision immediately adjacent to it. And it's next to College Lake, which is now a source for water reclamation for the Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency and farmland. And it is about a mile as the wind blows from the Santa Cruz County Fairgrounds, which is the evacuation site for the county.
Wow.
So, yes, one has to wonder, how did they decide to put it here?
Right.
Who decided? And
Right.
who will benefit?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. I wonder if you want to accept this call. It's from Nina Adino. Do you want to accept that?
Of course.
All right. The leader of Stop Lithium Bus in Santa Cruz County. Let's see if we can get Nina on. Hello, Nina. Can you hear us? Hello? Oh, I don't hear you, Nina. Are you there? I'm not hearing you, Nina. You might try calling back if you can. Try again. We'll continue. We've got about 8 minutes here, so call back, Nina, if you can. So you're going to be speaking. This is a public meeting coming up next Thursday, July 17th, at the Simpkins Family Swim Center, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. It will be in person, and I know that the group is also working to get a remote possibility for remote participation. And tell us a little bit about if you've connected with Santa Cruz County officials about these projects. The one that at 90 Minto Road is in the permitting process. The other one of the two is on Freedom Boulevard, across Freedom Boulevard from Aptos High School. And then the third is on Paul Sweet Road, actually a small road, Houts, Houts Drive, right next to Dominican Hospital. Isn't that amazing? So tell us, have you had an opportunity to talk with any Santa Cruz County leaders?
No, I haven't personally talked to any Santa Cruz County officials or leaders. At the public meeting next week, my focus will be how this is an environmental justice concern.
Yeah.
And also kind of highlighting the life cycle of lithium and how we use lithium, from the mining process and the communities that are sacrificed and overburdened from the mining, all the way to when there are batteries and we have battery storage systems that burn in communities. And seeing how this, what is called a green solution that we're going to use to decarbonize and meet our climate goals, where we can follow along how the lithium was mined, processed, and then when it is a battery and at the end of its life, all the communities along the way that are not accounted for, and then they're kind of sacrificed along the way. That which makes this not a green solution right now.
Right.
We can't solve climate change and decarbonize by sacrificing and leaving communities behind, degrading environments and entire communities, sacred and native land that we can't restore.
Yeah.
I'll be focusing on lithium from the mining to when it is a battery and the risks along the way of the lithium life cycle. And then the risks of this type of facility and, kind of why this facility was chosen. It's not necessarily an accident. It's a repeat pattern of racism that we see within these agencies, and within environmentalism, and how we combat climate change, and what's our first priority when we're combating climate change. It's typically money and our economy and not necessarily the people along the way in the communities and our environment's ability to be restored or cleaned up after the fact.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your good work. We all have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And what has been amazing to me is that there is this feverish push to accomplish and to build these battery storage places using lithium technology when there are alternatives on the very near horizon. That if we only paused for a little bit, we would be able to institute those safe, not safer, as we're being told, the different lithium composition of these other batteries. The lithium iron phosphate is safer than the nickel cobalt manganese was. That's what burned in Moss Landing. But we don't want to accept a small difference in safety when it's not been proven.
Right.
We don't want that risk. It is not worth it. And because there are alternatives like sodium that is so close, Natron is setting up installations, production, and it's right there. You know, the California Energy Commission held some very good symposiums last fall, and there was a fellow, Dr. Corapella from Sandia National Labs, that went through all of the different alternatives and how close they are. It's very close. And why is it not worth waiting even 1 year is all I think it could take to not have to depend on this very dangerous, risky lithium technology that is prone to fire and explosion and toxic contamination.
Right. And how are we, reducing our energy use overall, too?
Yes.
We can't just create these facilities to allow, our energy use to just keep growing exponentially.
Exactly.
That's not a solution to climate change.
No.
We need to lower our energy use, be sustainable along the process. We have to turn off the tap. We can't just let it run and then have batteries fill up and store all of it, and we see things like our energy use isn't necessarily going down, or
it's being encouraged to electrify everything.
Right. So
yeah,
how can we, reduce on a bigger, larger scale too?
Yeah. I want to thank you. I know you're doing difficult work, but very important work. For those of you just tuning in, we have been talking with Skylar Sacoolas from GreenAction, and it is a real honor to have you here in the studio to meet you, and I look forward to seeing you again Thursday, July 17th at the Simkin Swim Center, 6:30 to 8:30. We've got 30 seconds. What would you like to leave with the listeners?
I'll just say to learn more about GreenAction, check out our website. Support our work, www.greenaction.org, and environmental justice doesn't leave communities behind.
Yeah.
Learn about environmental justice. We can't sacrifice anybody along the way.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me today.
My pleasure. You've been listening to Community Matters. Stay on with us for the second hour. We will continue this conversation and more. Thank you again, Skylar.
Thank you
you so much. All right, we are off the air.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think I only lost my train of thought a few times.
Oh, it's hard. Sometimes I throw you curveballs.
No. I appreciated your help and, question steering too.
I really appreciate the work you're doing. I know that the people in Moss Landing have been, I'm going to talk a little bit about Monday's event.
Yeah.
And what they've determined, Ed Mitchell and
Yeah.
wonderful
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely. And he's done a lot of research on, why did this happen? Is it your guys' fault?
Right.
What have you guys been doing to monitor this and make sure that, you're managing these batteries properly?
Yeah.
So I've learned so much from them. It's outstanding.
Was that fun?
This is Michael Olson. This is Skylar
Hi, nice to
Sacoolas.
meet
Nice
you.
to meet you. Thank you for your good work.
Thank
Yeah.
you for having me.
You bet.
Indeed. So there's a lot more to do, and we just all have to link arms.
Yeah.
I think so far we've got them stumped. I mean, they're trying to figure out what to do, but
And they're stalling on giving us the
They're
rest of the data.
stalling.
of course they are.
Because I expect they're gonna come back and they're gonna say, oh, we actually did find a little bit of something. And then they're gonna come up with a plan. We know that there's more. We know
Sure.
But yeah, the DTSC, the Department of Toxic Substance Control, owes us data. And the EPA owes us.
And the impact on the farmland, that's a topic very
That's-
close
yeah,
to
that's-
Michael's heart here. And
That's when I saw the plume, I thought, that's our soil.
Right. That's where we grow
Yeah.
the salad
Salad
bowl of
bowl,
America. Yeah, because I saw on the Facebook group, a lot of people were like, "Hey, don't eat the food, blah blah blah," and it's so scary. I mean, that's the
Scary.
food we're all eating that so many other people are eating, not just local people.
Yeah, all around the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Literally.
Mhm.
Driscoll strawberries goes everywhere. So.
are you working at all with the farm worker community?
In the Central Valley, but not here necessarily, or we haven't at least lately.
Mm-hmm.
We had a youth academy in Gonzales, in 2016. So we did some work there with pesticide drift and youth education, but not recently.
Yeah. Regeneración, I think, is doing some of that work
Yeah.
in Pajaro Valley
Yeah.
with youth. But, while the battery fire was happening, I saw the farm workers out there.
Sure.
So,
I mean, this should be an issue that ties farmers and farm workers together.
would hope.
It's
But-
probably one of the few.
So far, the farmers don't want to
They
really
don't
talk
wanna-
about it,
yeah, of course
because
not.
if you know, then
Right.
you have to declare.
Right. They can still sell it right now. They're still, profitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's their land. It's the land.
Right. So if they don't want to, sacrifice the integrity or cleanliness of it.
Yeah.
You know what's going to be interesting is this year's cannabis crop, because cannabis has the propensity to take up heavy metals.
And that goes through more testing.
Very
typically.
rigorous because
Right.
of that.
That makes
So
sense.
that's going to be our canary in the coal mine, so to speak. I
Are
think
there
for some of the
cannabis farms in the area that.
there's a pretty big one. I think in greenhouses, Kitayama Farms.
Yes. Yeah, it's close. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting.
So-
Think about that.
We'll see. And it's like I was talking with one of our other hosts here. We were talking about the Cannabis Connection
Yeah.
program, and that's where I learned about that. I didn't know. And so we were kind of positive, wouldn't it be something if cannabis were the way to clean up the soil?
Oh my God.
And then you'd have to compost it, but we learned at that panel, there are bacteria and fungi that can bioremediate.
Yeah, fungi is the big one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Anyway,
thank you.
Thank you so much for having
Thank
me.
you. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for having her.
It's my honor, really.
Thank you
my
so
honor.
much.
Thank you.
And thank you. This is so
You're
sweet. I
welcome.
love chocolate.
Who doesn't?
I know.
Thank you. And the program is recorded, and it will be posted on the Santa Cruz Voice website by about 5 today. So I'll send you
Beautiful.
a link. Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to stay if you want to. I think Dino is going to call back. So
Oh, perfect.
yeah, you're welcome to stay if you like, but Yeah, I know you're a busy
Thank
lady.
you. I have to run.
You do,
But
yeah.
thank you so much.
My
I really
pleasure
appreciate
again.
it.
Thank
and
you.
Contact me whenever.
Okay.
I'm local. I biked here. I'm so close to the studio.
I would like to actually talk with you about a program at Shapiro Knolls because they have not even been included and they don't know about this project.
Please do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And welcome back to Community Matters. I'm your host, Becky Steinbrunner. This is coming into our second hour. I want to thank you for staying on or tuning in, whichever your schedule has allowed today. If you missed the first hour, this program is recorded, and I will be posting the recorded program, the link to it, by 5 p.m. today on the Santa Cruz Voice website. You scroll down under current shows and click on Community Matters. So again, I want to thank Skylar Sacoolas from GreenAction coming into the studio and telling us about her good work. I have a caller here on the screen, Nina Adino. If you can wait just one moment, I'll just give a little bit of a wrap-up from the GreenAction. For those of you who haven't heard of GreenAction, I hadn't, but as Skylar described for us, it was founded in 1997 by grassroots community leaders and helped save the Ward Valley from becoming a nuclear waste dump on indigenous native land. And they fight to help people who have been affected by industrial and environmental disasters, such as what we were talking about, the Moss Landing Vistra battery fire that happened in January and then flared up again in February and is still, perhaps, the wind is blowing it around yet. GreenAction follows the principles of environmental justice adopted at the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C. in 1991, believing that everyone has a right to clean air, water, and a healthy environment to live, work, go to school, and play, meaningful participation in government and industry decision-making processes, be informed by government and corporations about decisions affecting their community, to decide whether or not they want to be exposed to pollution and injustices. GreenAction. Look them up and get involved to whatever extent you can. As Skylar said, she will be speaking. She will be one of two guest speakers at the public event being hosted by the Stop Lithium Bus in Santa Cruz County. That will be next Thursday, July 17th, at Simpkins Family Swim Center, the community center actually that's next to it. That's at 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And I urge you all to come to learn more about the 3 battery sites planned for Santa Cruz County, one of which is zooming along in the permit process. I also want to say that on Monday, next Monday, the 14th at 1:30 p.m., Never Again Moss Landing will be talking about the fact-finding that they've done. Mr. Ed Mitchell is an amazing investigator and researcher, and he will be presenting the underlying causes and operational failures of the state regulators that contributed to the Moss Landing Vistra fire. Trying to hold the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, and Vistra accountable. That will be in person next Monday, 1:30 at the Prunedale Grange, with an online option to also join. Go to the neveragainmosslanding.org website, and it's right there for you to see and to join. The next day, on July 15th, PG&E will be talking on a symposium online. Also, if you want to go to Oakland for in-person, 9 to 3, talking about their plans for battery energy storage. On July 24th, the California State Fire Marshal will be holding a day-long symposium on upgrading the state's battery energy storage system fire regulations, and that will be July 24th in Sacramento, but also online. You can register for that free symposium on the California State Fire Marshal website. And then finally, on July 30th, the Santa Cruz County Commission on the Environment will be holding their second of 3 symposiums on energy, and this one will be focused on the battery energy storage systems in Santa Cruz County, linking with the county and Central Coast Community Energy, known as 3CE, their goal of having 100% renewable energy by 2030. 2030. That's 15 years ahead of the state's 2045 goal, and we have to question that. All right, I have a little more that I would like to read at some point about what Mr. Ed Mitchell from Never Again Moss Landing has determined, and we'll be discussing Monday 14th, but Nina Adino has been waiting for quite some time. So I want to bring her on. And Nina Adino is an amazing researcher and has built a wonderful website full of information. Stop Lithium BESS, that's the acronym BESS, in Santa Cruz County. Let's see if I can bring you on this time, Nina. I hope we can talk. Hello, Nina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Ah, success.
Can you hear me?
Yes, this time I can. I could not before, so I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you for calling in, and thank you for all you're doing. What would you like to say now?
Well, I wanted to thank you so much for being patient and for the time to speak up here a little bit, and just also thank you for all the work that you do, the good work on the station. I actually had to leave my call the last time because I took a call from a fellow concerned California resident in Orange County who gave me phone number and leads to a couple of retired fire chiefs in Southern California who would be willing to speak up about the risks that BESS pose to firefighters and residents. And so we need that. We need that at our meeting that's coming up on Thursday. And so should they not be able to make the meeting that's coming up, the public meeting that's coming up on Thursday, I'm sure they will be there for our next one. So that's what I was doing, and I just apologize.
Oh, no, thank you.
I refocused on that and kind of left this show for a little while.
Oh, yeah. Good. Thank you. It's time well spent. Thank you.
Yeah, so I wanted to just, you may have talked about this already because I kind of joined the first hour about 20 minutes in, and I may have missed this, but Monterey County had a board meeting right on Tuesday, and there was an update on the cleanup that's supposed to commence. I don't know if you guys have talked about that or not.
No, we have not.
Here that, this is Glenn Church's update, and it states EPA and Vista are working on a community engagement plan to gather information on how best to engage with the community during the battery and debris removal. Apparently, Vista has located a site in Nevada that's willing to take their toxic waste, and they're looking for another site as well. And then, so the other piece down here toward the end of his notes states that apparently the board has given the county staff, I guess, direction to work with a toxicologist to review existing data and prepare a comprehensive risk assessment. And once that directive was given, staff found that they would need to first fill data gaps and clean up the existing data in order to be able to analyze it. And I know that there are issues with the data that so Skylar talked to that. And then the last part is the most concerning to me. It says that separate from the county Vistra's consultant, we know that that's CTEH, kind of a company that is infamous for being a hired gun, hired by large corporations to clean up toxic sites to make them look much less toxic than they are. Anyway, so it says that Vistra's consultant is preparing a human health risk assessment that will be reviewed by state and federal agencies for accuracy and completeness. And there's a link that basically sends you nowhere. There's no further information on the link. So I did want to ask Skylar whether she was aware of that last piece, because I don't have any faith at all that CTAH is going to come up with an actual reflecting real risk assessment that's then going to be passed on to the state and federal agencies so that they can check it for accuracy. I don't have much faith at all in that chain of command I just described, and that just seems really far out there for me. So, and I don't know if you know anything more about that.
I don't. I did ask Skylar a little bit about the cleanup and how that would relate to chronic exposure for people in the area. She didn't mention this new information that you have brought to us from Monterey County's update from Glenn Church, County Supervisor Glenn Church. As you were talking about this, so here are going to be truckloads of toxic stuff on our highways going to a dump somewhere in Nevada. Why can they not consider on-site bioremediation with these fungi and bacteria that have been discussed at the panel?
Yeah, I agree.
Alternatives analysis has to be a part of it. So, I guess do you have any information about when this report from Vistra's consultant, CTEH, might become publicly available?
No, absolutely not. This is the first I'm hearing about it, actually. Perhaps I should have heard about it already previously, but this is coming from Glenn Church, and it's a summary of what was discussed this last Tuesday at the Board of Supervisors meeting in Monterey. And so I guess we will hear more, or we need to follow up so that we know more about this. And I think that this is going to become the crux of the matter, and what Skylar's words were speaking to. So there has to be an accurate assessment of how this affected people's health.
Yes.
And, whether down the road that also involves assessing the soil that we grow our food in, that's also critically important. But bottom line, there has to be an accurate assessment of how many people have become sick, and it has to be long term, because we know that when toxic sites like this, chemical disaster toxic sites like this occur, we know that there are cancer curves and illness curves, bumps that happen over the course of 5 to 10 years. So without a commitment from the corporation has no commitment to do a longitudinal study like that at all.
No.
But without a commitment from the state or federal government, basically this becomes just an unaddressed tragedy and miasma. I mean, that's like what Skylar was talking to when she was talking about the nuclear site, Ward Valley, right? And it's just, and there have been so many situations like that. So I hope and pray that this our beautiful area, our precious area, fights for this, and that we follow through with it, and we get this in place, that there is longitudinal work and longitudinal studies done to track the health effects of this. It's just very, very important.
Indeed, it is. And I'm thinking about taking what we have learned from Moss Landing and applying that to what needs to happen for future projects like this. How can we take what we've learned and bake in regulations that have teeth into the Santa Cruz County's battery energy storage ordinance? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my first thought is just that, and I think, well, I know that this is the firm position that our group has taken. Utility scale lithium-based battery energy storage facilities. The one proposed just outside of Watsonville city limits at 90 Minto Road is going to have 300 containers. That's a huge, huge site. It's an industrial site. We have taken the position that these types of utility scale sites do not belong in neighborhoods. And this one is in a neighborhood. So they are situating it about 500 feet away from a very densely populated neighborhood. And so on an orchard, and so I guess they can technically claim that it's not inside a neighborhood, but it's much too close.
Much too close.
And much too close, yeah. And it's 750 feet away from an affordable housing, low-income, dense complex of apartments, and then following them down the length of Minto Road and all the roads around it, there's more housing. It's just a very dense little community that goes all the way up and down next to Green Valley Road. So I don't see that it's appropriate to site these kinds of facilities in neighborhoods or on farmland that we, amidst farmland that we use to farm food on.
Yeah.
And so there's no solution to that for me. I mean, they need to come up with an alternative technology fast.
Yes. I feel there is no place for risky, dangerous, toxic facilities like this. Putting it out in the desert is not the answer, because there is life there too. So the answer is not to just push it off somewhere else, but to stop it. Just as the title of your organization says, stop. In Santa Cruz County, I would take it one step further, period. Stop lithium BESS. There are alternatives coming along, and that's what we need to put our focus on and halt the use of a risky technology. Nina, do you want to... yes, please go ahead. I was going to say, do you want to talk a little more about what's going to happen Thursday? I want our listeners to learn more about that too.
Yes, I can do that. But since I'm on the radio and maybe many people are listening, right? I know that you feel strongly about this. Also, I just wanted to speak a little bit to the very sophisticated industry marketing narrative that is focusing kind of with laser-like precision on two aspects of these BESS facilities. How safe, allegedly, the second-generation lithium-ion batteries are. They're not the same nickel, manganese, cobalt construction or chemical combination that was used in Moss Landing, and those are the ones that went up in a 250-foot tall inferno and that demolished the Vistra Moss Landing BESS 300. It's a new kind of battery, and it's called the lithium iron phosphate battery, LFP, and the industry is promoting very strongly a narrative that it is a safer battery. But industry, whether it's the lithium battery industry or the battery energy sector, their narrative which is a marketing narrative, is not the same as academic research, science-based review and analysis. It's not the same. And I know our group has read a meta-analysis published in a science research journal, the Journal for Energy Storage. It was published a year ago in April of 2024. And that meta-analysis studied 60 other, that's not a small number, 60 other scientific papers that all basically agree that it's the chemistry of this second generation allegedly safer battery actually is more dangerous, more explosive, higher risk of flammability, and once it burns, it produces significantly more of the very poisonous HF gas, hydrogen fluoride gas. And so there's a statement also in that scientific paper that says that they use the word popular, which is so concerning, right? So this is like popular science, or like I said, the industry's popularizing narrative, right? Mm-hmm. But a popular narrative that sounds good to people and kind of makes all the problems go away is not science. And so in the paper, it basically says that the popular belief in the LFP battery being the safest battery stems from typical abuse tests that they do, like penetration and overheating, because LFP has lower maximum temperatures, lower heat generation, and also because there is an absence of visible sparks and flames. But then the authors say, however, should that battery burn, and of course there is a possibility that it will burn, then it is much more toxic. And then they caution. They say it's unwise to categorize the safety of a battery system based on the abuse tests of cells when you're not accounting for the explosion of the off gas and how toxic it is. And you're also not accounting for the influence of the battery system design on failure behavior, because you're not taking into account all the ways in which other parts in the system can fail and lead to venting in this type of cell, which actually, should it ever burn, is going to produce a much bigger problem. So I wanted to speak to that a little bit, because that narrative from the industry is, I think, it's very dangerous, and it's putting really intelligent people to sleep. Like, people are listening to it and just ignoring science. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was kind of like that. Yeah. And the other piece that our community, sadly, Santa Cruz County, sadly, is really being hammered by, and we heard this at the first commission on the environment panel that they've put together, we're just completely being bashed and hammered by this, is constant comparisons to the tragedy at Moss Landing, and the statement that, of course, it's not going to be repeated, and that was a one-off. Mm-hmm. But again, that's one way to tell the story. The other way is to look at this squarely for what it is scientifically. What happened at Moss Landing is an example of a worst-case scenario, and we're not magicians. We don't live in a Harry Potter universe. You can't say that a worst-case scenario will never happen again. Perhaps it won't happen the way it happened at Moss Landing. We understand that. We're all intelligent beings, but you can't tell people that there won't be a worst-case scenario. So those are the two things I just wanted to speak to a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you. Very well put. For those of you who just tuned in, we're listening with caller Nina Adino, who is with her husband Greg, the primary mover and shaker of the Stop Lithium BESS in Santa Cruz County group. Excellent website. Go check it out. Stop Lithium BESS in SantaCruzCounty.org. Nina and her group have put on, this is the third public information event for people to be able to learn about what is going on in Santa Cruz County, with the Santa Cruz County supervisors having already adopted in concept an ordinance allowing 3 of these facilities in our county. And one of them, the one at 90 Minto Road in Watsonville, as we've been saying, is already in the permit process. The risk assessment for that facility did not even show on their map the very dense subdivisions around it of Minto Road, Shapiro Knolls Apartments, affordable housing complex, the Diamond Estates, and down the road just a little bit, the Amador, the whole subdivision on Amador Drive. Nothing of that was shown. It was a blur on the map and not considered in the risk assessment. So why are the supervisors not holding any town hall meetings about that? That's what we want to know, and that is what the good group that Nina Adino and her husband Greg have been working tirelessly and putting forth a lot of their own money, along with others in the group, to put on these public meetings so people can become educated. So, Nina, anything else that you want to say? I'd like to just talk a little bit about what the Never Again Moss Landing findings will be on Monday. Anything else you want to say? And then I'd like to give some time to the local grand jury reports so people know about those too. Go ahead,
okay,
Nina.
It sounds good. I might go a little bit out on the limb here, and I really want to invite a group like Regeneración in Watsonville. I didn't know that Skylar's GreenAction for Health and Environmental Justice is the whole name of their group. I didn't know that they were working in Pajaro Valley with Regeneración over the issue of pesticides, which is a terrible burden on our community. And so I am just hoping that we can come to the table together as organizations, because it's been my understanding so far that the director of Regeneración is actually strongly supporting the installation of these best facilities in Santa Cruz County. And we understand that this is it's a difficult and complex discussion, because our group is profoundly concerned about safety, health, and environmental integrity. That's paramount. And then so is Regeneración with their insistence on the primacy of climate action. And these are equally important. And I just am hoping that sometime soon we can come to the table and just kind of talk about that a little bit. I think that would be very important. And also I just want to second that we're overjoyed that Skylar is going to be, from GreenAction for Health and Environmental Justice, is going to be presenting, and we'll take a lot of questions from the audience. And we're very, very happy that Brian Roeder from Never Again Moss Landing is going to be there too. We think those two speakers side by side will be very, very important for our community to hear. And perhaps we will also have someone to speak on behalf of the firefighting community. And if not, we will do that at our next meeting. And that's it. Did I cover everything, Becky?
That's marvelous. Thank you. Thank you for all your work. And I hope we can get the fire community there too, because those are our responders, and they would be the first in line for the most hazardous of situations. And we've got to protect them and their families. So thank you. Thank you, Nina. Tell us your website one more time, because it's marvelous.
Okay, so it's www.stoplithiumbesinsantacruz.org.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your good work and for calling in today. And I look forward to seeing you Thursday, July 17th.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
You as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nina. So thank you. anyone else wanting to call in, please do so. The number to call is 831-265-5050. I want to talk just briefly about the Never Again Moss Landing event Monday, July 14th at 1:30. In person, that will be at the Prunedale Grange on Morrow Road in Prunedale, with participation remotely as well. You can find all this information on the neveragainmosslanding.org website. But I printed out the regulatory agency investigation findings that Mr. Ed Mitchell from the Never Again Moss Landing group has identified. He is a professional expert in evaluating these toxins and the government procedures, and has been affected also by everything there. He lives there. And number one, the California Public Utilities Commission, the acronym CPUC, has failed its regulatory mission listed on its website of providing, quote, safe, affordable, and reliable public-owned utility service, end quote, by using lithium-ion battery storage. Number two finding, the PUC regulator failed to protect the first responders, employees, public, local businesses, the Central Coast environment, and nearby agriculture fields by providing inadequate oversight and allowing largely unregulated self-policing by the facility operator, Vistra. Finding three, after 8 prior significant battery storage fires in 3 years, California state energy agencies have repeatedly failed to sample and report hazardous material and chemical data which might show dangers to first responders, storage employees, the public, businesses, the environment, and critical agricultural land. And finding 4, California's PUC regulator, before the Vistra disaster and still now, has not issued installation, safety, and operating codes for single building, high density, indoor lithium battery storage facilities dealing with single building thermal runaway events at the row unit and building level. Join the Never Again Moss Landing folks on Monday, July 14th. I expect it will be recorded and posted on their website. You can find posted on their website, and again, this is neveragainmosslanding.org, the video of the expert panel that happened. Ms. Skylar Sacoolas from GreenAction was one of those panelists, and I urge you all to take a look at that and to get involved. And once again, as Nina pointed out, July 30th will be the second of 3 public educational meetings that the County Commission on the Environment will be making available. I have to tell you that they're kind of supporting the company line so far. So it is important that the people with questions show up, ask the questions, and demand the answers. Because we heard from 3CE at the last Commission on the Environment meeting that it would not be possible to slow down, to allow time to evaluate alternate energy storage alternatives. And they were forced by Miss Nina Adino to admit that 3CE has financially supported a new lithium-ion battery energy storage project in Monterey County called the Holman, like Holman Highway, Holman LLC BESS. And 3CE has not been forthcoming in their continued support of lithium-ion BESS. We need to hold them accountable. We need to demand that they divest of lithium-ion battery storage. And the way to do that is to opt out of 3CE. Opt out of 3CE. 3CE, Central Coast Community Energy, holds 93+% of the electrical ratepayer accounts in Santa Cruz County. And that's because when they came into operation in 2017, it was designed so that if you didn't say anything, you were automatically a customer of theirs. You had to actively opt out. You can still opt out, and we are urging people to opt out of 3CE in protest of their continued silent support, I will say that, silent support of lithium-ion battery storage facilities in communities up and down the coast of California and within the state of California. They have to hear us, and the best way to help them hear us is by opting out. They are the keystone feature of the Santa Cruz County's Climate Action Adaptation Plan. And if in the plan, which also supports 100% for the county, based on 3CE, they're in bed together, let me tell you. If the opt-out rate reaches 2%, the county demands 3CE to explain why. And we want 3CE to explain that people do not want lithium energy storage in our county or anywhere. The only way to do that is to opt out. You can do it. You can do it online. There's no penalty. They charge $5 for a residential customer, $25 for a commercial customer. You have to be part of PG&E for 1 year. But people who have opted out have discovered that their power bills are much lower. So if you want to learn more about what PG&E's plan is and their support of lithium BESS, there's an online symposium coming up next Tuesday, July 15th, from 9 to 3. And you can go on PG&E's website, sign up for that, and learn more about that too. And let's pressure them just as much as we're pressuring 3CE. You're listening to Community Matters. I'm your host, Becky Steinbrunner. If you want to call in, please do and join a conversation here about energy, battery energy storage, or anything else of concern to you in the area. Our phone number is 831-265-5050. I will just give you a little bit of a preview of our show next Friday. I will be honored to have as a guest Miss Sarah Christensen, who is the CEO of Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission, the RTC, which is really in the news a lot these days for the rail trail, the highway widening, and maybe even the July 30th opening of the new pedestrian overcross bridge on Highway 1. July 30th, known as the Whale Motif Crossing, is supposed to open up on July 30th. Miss Sarah Christensen will be my guest next Friday, and I hope that you'll tune in then. I would like to now shift to a different topic, and that is the Santa Cruz County Grand Jury. The Santa Cruz County Grand Jury is a civil grand jury, not a criminal grand jury. There is a difference, and every county in California is required to have a civil grand jury with the purpose of, first and foremost, reviewing the jails, detention centers in each county, the county in which the jury is empaneled, and to make sure that it is clean, safe, and being well run. That is the first and foremost charge of the county grand jury. And then it is left up to the empaneled jurors to determine what other investigations they want to do. The civil grand jury can investigate government, county government, city government, and special districts, such as fire districts, water districts, things like that. And the investigations come sometimes from members of the public who have filled out a form. Sometimes it's called a complaint. I like to call it more a request for investigation because that's really what it is. The grand jury then evaluates those and determines whether there is merit to further investigate it. They do a query first and do sort of a quick investigation using resources available like websites, newspaper articles, things like that. And then they can, with the vote of the full grand jury, the plenary it's called, launch a full investigation, which gives the committee, the investigative committee, which has to be or supposed to be at least 4 people, 4 grand jurors, the ability to request personal interviews with different members of the government or special district and ask them questions. And the jurors can, based on the answers to the questions or further questions they might develop, can request documents from these people. And that becomes evidence in the investigation. This is a 1-year process. The jurors have just been empaneled for the coming year, the 2025-2026 grand jury, civil grand jury. And they are being trained now by volunteers from the California Grand Jurors Association, a statewide group of volunteers that believes in the importance of the grand jury and what it does for the people to really promote effective, efficient, honest, accountable government. Imagine that. And if in the process of their investigation, the grand jury investigative committee uncovers what could be determined to be criminal activity, they are required to report it to the county district attorney. And from there, it is the discretion of the district attorney what happens. So the Santa Cruz County Civil Grand Jury of 2024-2025 just released their reports late in June. I had the honor of serving for the first time on that grand jury, and it was quite an amazing experience. I learned so much about local government and so much about people in the course of the investigations that I helped on. So I urge all of you to go look on the Santa Cruz County Grand Jury website. Up on the top, they have a bar that says Our Reports, and what comes up is a link for the last 10 years worth of reports. I think you should look at those, but most notably, look at what has just come out. I'll read for you the titles of the 6 reports that have just been issued. The first one is Climate Action Demands Outreach, and that report actually reviews how the county is getting the word out about their goals for addressing climate change and their dependence on this group that Nina and I have discussed here, the Santa Cruz County Commission on the Environment. They are the main way that the county is educating the public about what needs to happen here in the county regarding the environment and issues dealing with energy, water, transportation, air, lots of those things. So that's the first report that came out. The next one is called Honoring Commitments to the Public. And that is something that the grand jury does, at least Santa Cruz County grand jury does every year, the group goes back to 2 years prior and looks at the reports that grand jury did and what the government agents who were asked to respond said they were going to do. The grand jury follows up. Did they do what they said they were going to do? And sometimes they find they have, sometimes they find they haven't, and so they have the ability to go back to those agencies and say, well, you didn't do it, how come? Holding them accountable. So that's the second one that came out, and the primary issue that was further investigated had to do with data breaches in county data systems. It was very interesting. So I urge you to go look at that. The next one that was issued was one called Handcuffing and Transport, the policy of Watsonville Police Department. It was determined that Watsonville Police Department officers tend to, more often than other agencies, handcuff and transport someone from the field situation, take them to the station and release them there. I don't know if you've ever been handcuffed. I haven't yet. My husband has, and he said it was just kind of a shocking, demoralizing thing because you are totally at the mercy of the person. And having to go through that can be traumatizing, especially for a young person. There is always argument that, well, it kind of slaps them up against the side of the head and gets their attention to be good kids, but maybe there's damage done that makes them, causes problems of greater import further down the road. So that one, Watsonville Police Department handcuffing and transport policies. The next one that came out was navigating the building permit process again. And that's one I helped work on. I also helped work on the Watsonville handcuffing one. I want to say that committees work on a investigation, write the report ourselves, and then it is put forward to the approval of the full plenary. So it's never a handful of people that issue the report. It is issued by the full plenary with a minimum of 12 people approving it. So the building permit process was a very interesting one. And one of the recommendations that I want you to think about and read about is that it recommends to the County Board of Supervisors that the Building and Fire Appeals Board be reinstituted. And what that is, it is discussed in the report. I urge you to read it. What that allowed back when the Building and Fire Appeals Board was in effect was that industry professionals were able to review appeals presented by members of the public when there was a problem with some issue of them getting a permit. And they could offer alternate ways to accomplish the same effect. And it could go before the appeals board. These were professionals volunteering their time. And in 2009 and 10, the county changed that, and now the County Board of Supervisors acts as the appeal board. Now, none of those supervisors, they're good people, but they're not experts in building and fire codes. And yet they are the ones that are tasked with making decisions on whether an appeal has merit or not. They're completely reliant upon the staff report, which is what the appeal is all about in the first place. And the person making the appeal has to pay over $2,000 just to bring that issue to the board. So think about that. And if you think there's merit in reinstituting the Building and Fire Appeals Board, I urge you to contact your supervisor and urge that when they respond to this recommendation in the grand jury report, that they agree, at least in a pilot project, to use this appeal process. The next report that came out was entitled Human Trafficking in Santa Cruz County. Voices Unheard, Signs Unseen. And this report I worked on a lot. This was a tough investigation. Many people left the committee because it was really, really pretty dark. But our committee was able to get this together, and we interviewed many, many people. I urge you to read this report and to talk with your friends, your family, especially young people who are on social media, and understand that human trafficking is going on right now in Santa Cruz County. And the vulnerable populations are the youth. The vulnerable youth are the foster and the homeless and those who are just having a hard time in life, but not only them. Because of social media, the social media aspect levels the playing field, and it makes all youth vulnerable to being groomed and recruited by a human trafficker, both for labor traffic, most notably young girls, but also young boys for sex trafficking. And the reason is because we are so close to the Bay Area. But it goes on in this county too. And with the incoming Super Bowl and World Cup in our backyard coming up in 2026, the pressure to supply those trafficked will increase. So please talk with your kids, talk with your family, talk with your neighbors. This is a thing in Santa Cruz County. As much as we don't want to think that it is, it is. Read the report and talk with each other and with your supervisor, because there were many very good recommendations in there that I think can help this problem throughout our area. And the last report is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And this was a very interesting report, data intensive, about the high cost of health for a handful of people in our county's mental health and justice system. The jail is a very interesting place, let me tell you, having toured it as a juror. But read that report, because there are millions of dollars being spent on a very small population. And this report makes some excellent recommendations about what we can do to improve that. I want to thank you all for listening in today to Community Matters. My name is Becky Steinbrunner, and I'm always honored to be your host here Friday afternoons from 2 to 4. And I really want to thank my guests today, Skylar Sacoolas from GreenAction, Nina Adinu, who called in from Stop Lithium BESS in Santa Cruz County. And I look forward to our program next Friday, talking with Sarah Christensen from the Santa Cruz County RTC. I hope you will go to the July 17th public meeting at Simpkin Swim Center and come back here and listen in next week. Thanks so much.